Today we're going over an app that I've been using lately to solve music gear questions and tech issues that I've had. Are there any devices that can play backing tracks without a computer?
Yes, there are several standalone devices that can play backing tracks without needing a computer, laptop, phone, or tablet.
It's an app for AI and it's called Perplexity. There's other AI apps out there. I know AI is kind of like the hot thing right now, but I've been using this a lot to solve some of my gear questions that I've had when I'm trying to do advanced programming or have questions about gear. You can either use Perplexity as an app or on their website, and it's free to use. And it's been a really great starting point if I have questions about how to set up gear or just questions in general with gear. And I almost always go straight to Perplexity to ask to at least get a starting point of it. Some of you might already be aware of this, but there's been a lot of people who haven't been aware of this as an option. I figured it was worth making a video on to help you guys out with some of your gear questions and stuff like that. It's not sponsored or anything like that. It's just an app that I've been using. Figured it's something I could share with you guys. That's enough of the intro. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not already subscribed, and let's go ahead and check out Perplexity. So you have three different ways that you can use it. You can either go open up a browser and go to perplexity.ai, and you can use it that way. They do now have an app for computers as well, which is what I actually prefer. It just looks like a little bit cleaner. And you also have it on your phone as well. It's worth creating an account if you want to have them sync up between all of your devices. But for the most part, I really like to use the app. They do have a pro model, which you can pay for, but like I said, this app is free to use. So I had an issue recently where one of my bandmates sent me a backing track that had the click and the tracks reversed. They had the click on the left side. I needed the click to be on the right side. So I used Perplexity and I said, can I flip the left and right stereo signal in Logic Pro X? That's the DAW that I use. I was like, there must be a quick fix for this because I'm not exactly sure what to do. And sure enough, it gave me this. It gave me three different options. I like the way that they lay this out, just with the numbers and the bullet points and stuff like that. Just makes things really easy to read. And the first suggestion was to use the gain plugin. So sure enough, I opened up Logic. This is a different track, but it's just a track that I pulled up. So you can hear that the click is on the right and then the tracks are on the left, which is correct, but again, I'm just going to show you that this does work. And what it says to do is to open up the gain plugin. So go under audio effects, utility, and then gain. So I'm gonna put that on here. And sure enough, there is swap left and right. And you can hear it does swap the left and the right. Solved my problem just like that, nice and easy. So here's just another example that I thought of. How do you enable a noise gate on the HX Stomp XL? And again, it's just laid out just nice with the bullet points and the labeling. That's one of the things that I really like about this. And it even gives you more info about like what each of the parameters of the noise gate do, which is pretty sweet. So it says to access the input block, navigate to the input block in your signal chain. It's typically the first block in your preset. I'll do that on my HX Stomp, and you can see there is the noise gate right there. So I know how to turn it on. And again, it gives me more details about these extra settings. Pretty helpful and definitely saves a lot of time. So it's definitely not going to work every single time. If you've used anything AI, you know that it's very specific with the way that you have to give it information. But here's a good example. How do I get ABLETON Move to receive MIDI commands? And it says to enable ABLETON Live to receive MIDI commands. And it's trying to tell me how to do that with ABLETON Live. It's like, well, that's not what I need. So you can ask a follow-up. So I said, I need the answer for ABLETON Move. And I capitalized ABLETON Move controller, not ABLETON Live. And now it gets it correct. To get the ABLETON Move controller to receive MIDI commands, follow these steps. Connect the hardware. It receives MIDI over USB-A. Once it's connected, push Shift Step 2 to open the settings and scroll down until you see MIDI. Sure enough, it works. And now my ABLETON Move is able to receive MIDI commands. I'm actually going to just dim the screen so you can see that it is in fact sending. You'll see the green notes light up when I push buttons on my MIDI controller. So it worked, but it took a little bit of rewording in order to get it. So I don't want you to think this is just going to always solve your problems, but it is quite helpful. Here's another example of one that I used recently. I used two WIDI master devices and I wanted them just to connect with each other and not connect to other devices. So I asked that. It gave me this nice layout of the steps that I needed to do in order to get this to work. Followed them exactly, and now it works in the way I want it. And that's pretty specific too. Like the WIDI master is a pretty specific device. So it's not just like generic info. Pretty helpful. Here's one more. What's the MIDI command to send to the HX Stomp to turn on and off the tuner? And it tells you MIDI command 68. I don't have to dig through through the manual in order to find this anymore. I can just ask Perplexity. Again, it's not always going to be perfect, but it saves a lot of time to not have to dig through a manual and just ask it this. And you also can use it to just get an understanding of something that you don't understand as well. So for example, what are the differences between remote, sync, and track in Ableton Live 12? This is something I like to do often. Keep it under 100 words and use layman's terms, please. I always say please because when the AI takes over, maybe at least they'll know that I was polite and they'll be nicer to me. But it tells you here, these are the differences between track, sync, and remote. And it keeps it a lot more concise. And it uses pretty simple terms to understand. So using layman's terms is something that I use quite often so that it keeps it simple and doesn't go too crazy. And keeping it under 100 words also keeps it from sending a really long paragraph of a ton of info if I just need kind of the basics. Just two things that I use often when I'm using AI especially. It's also nice that it gives you these related questions, so some potential follow-up questions that relate to the topic that you asked. I do find these are often pretty helpful. I'm going to switch over to the app on my phone for this next example, but you can also see your old searches by going to your library down here in the bottom right. And I remember that I asked it about an audio interface. I was looking for an audio interface, a specific one. So I'll just search for audio interface and it shows some of the recent searches that I had. So this is something I was looking for. What's the smallest audio interface that can be bus powered from an iPad and has 4 outputs? And the first one that it gave me was the Zoom U24. This wasn't quite what I was looking for, because it has RCA outputs for some of them. I don't want that. I need 1/4 inch outputs. So that's something I would need to specify, something to keep in mind. It has 4 outputs, but you have to specify it needs 4 1/4 inch balanced outputs. But I did a follow-up question of what's the smallest audio interface that can get power from an iPad without needing DC power. And it gave me the MOTU M4. I looked it up. This is actually exactly what I needed, and I ordered it. So that worked out really well for me. Here's some other library previous searches that I had. I wanted to see how to send MIDI messages to the Roland VT4. And sure enough, it told me that it uses sysx messages instead of MIDI control change messages. So that was good to find out. It made sense why I had so much trouble programming it. You can see here's another example of being specific. How do I send reverb to a monitor on the PRESONUS STUDIOLIVE 24R? They tried to tell me that on like a physical mixer, not in the app and not with like the rack mount one. So I asked a follow-up question. How do I configure this on the iPad app for PRESONUS Live digital mixers? And then it solves it. So again, you just have to be specific, and that's why it's really nice that it gives you the follow-up question. You can see in my library that I've been programming a lot of stuff in Ableton because I have a lot of different questions that I've asked about how to do certain things in Ableton. Next feature is just for the Pro model, but you can import like a PDF. So here's a PDF I found on MIDI 2.0. I can say summarize this in 100 words or less and keep it in simple terms, please. Layman's terms usually seems to work better, but mess around with it. And it gives me, a short summary. So it's not as long as this full article. I mean, we live in the TikTok generation where everyone wants to know these complex topics in 100 words or less. You should understand the article more if you want an actual understanding, but it is nice to get a summary. You also can take a picture of something. So here's a device that I'm working on a video on. So I know what this is, but if I wanted to know what it was, I could take a picture and say, what is this MIDI device? And it does take a little while to process this. This takes a little bit longer. And it answers exactly what the device was, and it does give you a lot of different information about what it's capable of. Again, remember to use 100 words or less if you don't want a whole lot of detail like this. I did actually use this pretty recently. I was trying to fix the DMX input on some lights that I had. I found this piece that was like glued together, so I actually took a picture of it. I said, what is this, and how do I melt the glue attached to it? And it figured it out, and it told me to use a hairdryer to gently warm the adhesive. And that's exactly what I did, and it actually worked. Again, AI is not going to be perfect, but these are just some examples of it working, and sometimes that I have used it. Again, a couple examples where it gets it wrong. I tried to ask it what is the MIDI command on the Sheeran Looper X to fade all tracks, and try to tell me through like the functions menu and stuff like that. I was like, no, I'm looking for the MIDI command, and it wouldn't do it. I even imported the PDF and tried to have it search for that, and it still couldn't do that. So it's not perfect, but again, I generally use it as a starting point. Here's another example that I could think of. How do I control a noise gate block with the HX Stomp XL? So this one was user error on my end. I actually want to turn a noise gate on and off with MIDI. This is actually setting you up to control some of the parameters of that noise block. So I actually need to be more specific. How do I turn on and off a noise gate block in the HX Stomp with MIDI? So here's where it's not really helping that much. It says to access the controller assign menu on your HX Stomp XL, but it doesn't tell me how to get there. So I said, where do I access the controller? Assign menu. It says from the home screen, select the parameter and push and hold the knob for a specific parameter. It's not actually correct. You push page left and page right together to get to the menu button, and that's what brings up controller assign. So it might just be gathering information from like an old firmware or something like that, or there's incorrect information online. See at the bottom where it says after learn controller, it has this 1 and this 3. You can click that and actually go see the sources of where it's pulling from, but it didn't get this one correct, or it's kind of close. And that's the thing, is like it can get you to a starting point, but it's also not going to be perfect. And like with most AI apps, if you pay for the pro model, you can actually talk to it. So I can ask it questions like this. How do I send MIDI commands from stage tracks 3 to control my music gear in sync with my backing tracks? And it will answer the questions and read it back to you.
To send MIDI commands from stage tracks 3 to control your music gear in sync with backing tracks, you embed MIDI commands directly into the song lyrics.
Kind of cool that it used one of my videos actually to figure this out.
For example, to send a command at 1 minute and 34 seconds, you would insert MIDI WO1 34s PC1 UDO 1.411 in the lyrics.
So this is pretty helpful. So let's say you don't want to use a computer or a tablet to play backing tracks and you want to look for something like that. You can ask it, are there any devices that can play backing tracks without a computer or a laptop or a phone or a tablet? I'm not going to speed this up. I'm just going to let this run in real time.
Yes, there are several standalone devices that can play backing tracks without needing a computer, laptop, phone, or tablet. Examples include 1. Beat by M Live, a portable device that plays multi-track audio, MIDI files, and even synchronizes with video. It features multiple outputs and a built-in digital mixer. 2. Idoru P1, a pedal-based device designed for playing backing tracks and managing MIDI needs during live performances. 3. Cymatic Audio U-Track 24.
That one actually has been discontinued, so I'm just going to stop it there. But again, now you can do more research now that you know about these products. FYI, you can find videos on both of those products on my channel. And most importantly, let's see how good AI actually is. Where can I go on YouTube to find good videos on wireless music gear for musicians, as well as MIDI and backing tracks tutorials?
For high-quality YouTube content on wireless music gear, MIDI, and backing tracks tutorials, you can explore the following. 1. Scott Uhl's channel. He has detailed videos on wireless music gear, including budget-friendly options and common mistakes, as well as comprehensive guides on backing tracks for live performances.
Thanks, Perplexity. I appreciate the support. Just a shout out to 2 AI channels that I really like on YouTube. Check out Futurepedia and Matt Wolf. They both have 2 really cool AI channels if you are interested in keeping up with everything going on with AI. I'll link to them down below in the description. It's AI. If you've used AI before, you know it's not perfect. You're not going to find every answer in here that you're looking for. However, this is where I go if I need as a starting point. Also with AI, don't do anything dumb. Don't do anything like, that involves something safety or potentially hazardous, just in case it gets the information wrong. Don't use it for legal advice and stuff like that, but just as far as like, oh, I need to do some MIDI programming or explain this article to me and keep it shorter. For things like that, I find myself using this almost constantly. I hardly ever use Google anymore, although Google has Google Gemini and it kind of works in a similar way. I just like the way that Perplexity has it laid out. I like the way that it does the paragraphs, and just a really cool app. Figured I'd share it with you guys. If you guys did find the video helpful, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. It feeds the YouTube algorithm gods, especially now that we're getting more AI focused anyways. Feeding those digital algorithm gods always helps. I do have another video going over MIDI problem solving. It's an older video of mine, but I have different apps that I use to help diagnose MIDI problems if you're doing MIDI specifically. And you can also check out my most recent video by clicking the links on your screen now. Thank you guys again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any other cool apps or stuff like that that you are using, please leave them as a comment down below. Also, let me know how you're using AI in your music journey. Very interesting time to be alive, that's for sure. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Scott Uhl Music. Thank you guys again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.